What 20th-century events shaped the art we see today? Here we take a look at how Europe was developing during the 20th century and its influence on the art world. The 20th century marked a significant transition in British history, beginning with Queen Victoria's passing and the ascension of her son, Edward VII. This period was characterized by numerous pivotal events that shaped the modern world. One such event was the devastating Spanish flu pandemic. The Spanish flu pandemic broke out after the First World War in 1918, and between 50 million and 100 million people died as a result. Edvard Munch, a survivor of the pandemic, painted this self-portrait. It is believed that the illness's impact also contributed to the death of Gustav Klimt in 1918 following a stroke. A rebellious and colorful art style, Fauvism, emerged around the turn of the century. Three of its most prominent figures, Henri Matisse, André Derain, and Maurice de Vlaminck, joined forces in 1901, sharing a studio and pioneering a new approach to painting. Though short-lived, their work had a profound and enduring influence on subsequent artistic movements. The early part of the century saw huge changes in the way we travel around our towns and cities. Flight was still a fair way off, with the Wright brothers still practicing. Transport across the oceans for both goods and emigrating families seeking a better life was becoming more accessible. And then, the unthinkable happened. In 1912, whilst carrying 2,240 passengers and crew to America, the unsinkable passenger ship, the Titanic, sank after hitting an iceberg in the North Atlantic. Only 706 people survived. As the world came to terms with the tragedy of the Titanic, the art world was witnessing the birth of Cubism. This groundbreaking movement, pioneered by Pablo Picasso and George Braque, challenged traditional notions of representation. Just days after suffragette Emmeline Pankhurst was imprisoned, Emily Davidson, a fellow activist, tragically lost her life at the Epsom Derby. Her death, after being struck by King George V's horse during the 1913 race, became a powerful symbol of the suffragettes' unwavering commitment to their cause. Alongside Fauvism and Cubism was expressionism, a style seen here in this self-portrait by Egon Schiele. Expressionist artists use distortion, exaggeration, and vivid colors to convey their inner feelings and emotions. They often focus on themes of anxiety, fear, and the human condition. To help us picture what else was happening in the world during that period of expressionism, Machu Picchu was rediscovered in 1911 and the Panama Canal was opened in 1914. And what was generally considered the first affordable car for the general public, the Model T Ford, was being mass-produced in America. The suffragette movement intensified as the First World War approached. One notable incident occurred in March 1914, when Mary Richardson used a meat cleaver to attack the Velázquez painting, Rokeby Venus in the National Gallery, London. This was just one example of the escalating violence and disruption caused by suffragettes, who targeted numerous paintings and buildings throughout the year. During the First World War, artists emerged as powerful voices, using their canvases to bear witness to the devastation and human suffering wrought by the conflict. Through their depictions of the trenches, the battlefield, and the aftermath of war, these artists offered a stark and often disturbing portrayal of the war's catastrophic consequences. Emerging in the aftermath of World War I, and following on from Cubism and expressionism, came Dadaism. Dadaism was a radical art movement characterized by its rejection of traditional values, logic, and reason. And, as Dadaism faded away around the 1920s, and almost as an extension of the absurd, surrealism took its place. Led by André Breton, René Magritte, and of course Salvador Dali. The 1930s was the decade of the Great Depression, characterized by a sharp decline in economic activity and a huge rise in unemployment. The Depression didn't stop the artists painting what they saw during these difficult years. Here we see one of Lowry's famous paintings, depicting a solemn image of workers returning to their arduous labor in the factories. In the 1930s, artists such as Grant Wood, Frida Kahlo, and Edward Hopper's realistic depictions of suburban scenes challenged viewers to see the familiar in a new light. In 1953, after World War II, Elizabeth is crowned Queen of the United Kingdom, and Mount Everest is conquered. Many more art movements began in the 1950s and continued in the following decades. Modern sculpture dominated our landscapes. The 20th century was a time of immense artistic innovation and experimentation. From the abstract art of Kandinsky to the freedom of street artists around the world, artists pushed the boundaries of what was possible and challenged traditional notions of art. As we look back on this century of artistic brilliance, we can appreciate the incredible diversity and creativity that emerged and continue to be inspired by the power of art to shape our understanding of ourselves and the world around us. I hope you have enjoyed this brief glance at 20th century Europe and some of the art it created.